The cafe in Carmel by the Sea was nearly empty. The sound of waves crashing in the distance mixed with the soft clatter of coffee cups. Clint Eastwood sat in his usual corner, a steaming black coffee in front of him, his sharp eyes scanning the ocean. He wasn't just watching the waves. He was lost in thought. At 90, Hollywood had all but forgotten him. Studios no longer called, and the world had moved on. But what haunted him most wasn't the industry's silence. It was the question he had no answer to. Was it time to stop? Just as he took a sip of his coffee, the cafe door swung open. A young man stepped in, eyes darting around nervously before locking onto Clint. The kid looked barely 30, messy hair, jeans that had seen better days, and a thick stack of papers in his trembling hands. A screenplay. For a moment, Clint sighed. He had seen this before. Young dreamers, chasing ghosts. But something about the kid's expression stopped him from looking away. He knew that look. It was the same one he had when he first arrived in Hollywood, with nothing but a dream and empty pockets. The young man hesitated, then walked up to Clint's table. "Mr. Eastwood, I don't mean to disturb you, sir, but He swallowed hard. "I need your advice." Clint looked up, his weathered face unreadable. "Sit down, kid." The young man pulled out a chair so fast it nearly fell over. He placed the screenplay on the table, but didn't push it toward Clint. That told Clint everything. This wasn't about getting a favor. This was about something deeper. "I've spent the last 5 years trying to make this film," the kid said, voice shaking. "Everyone tells me it's impossible, that I don't have the connections, the money, the experience." His eyes burned with frustration. "I just need to know, when do you stop? When do you finally accept that maybe you're just not meant for this?" Clint leaned back in his chair, his old leather jacket creaking. He stared at the kid for a long time. Then, in his signature gravelly voice, he spoke. "Let me tell you a story." The young man leaned in. "Back when I was starting out, Hollywood didn't want me either," Clint said. "They said my Adam's apple was too big, that I squinted too much, that I didn't look like a leading man." The kid's eyes widened. "For years, I knocked on every door, took every small role, swallowed every insult. I could have quit. Hell, I almost did." Clint's fingers tapped against his coffee cup. "Then one day I met an old cowboy stuntman on a cheap Western set. He looked at me and said, 'Kid, are you waiting for someone to give you permission?'" The young filmmaker swallowed hard. "I realized then that no one was coming to save me. No one was going to hand me a career. So I stopped waiting. I made my own rules." He leaned forward. "You want to make this movie? Stop asking when to quit. Ask yourself if you're willing to keep going, no matter what." The cafe fell silent. The young man sat still, the weight of those words sinking in. Then, slowly, he nodded. He picked up his screenplay, gripping it tighter than before. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. Clint gave him a slow nod. As the kid stood to leave, Clint called out, "What's your name, kid?" The young man turned back, determination burning in his eyes. "Christopher Nolan, sir." Clint froze. He watched as the kid walked out, back straight, script clutched tightly in his hands. And that was the last time he saw him. Years later, Clint sat in a packed theater watching Inception unfold on the screen. The same kid, now a world-renowned director, had created one of the most groundbreaking films of the decade. And as the credits rolled, Clint couldn't help but chuckle to himself. The world had nearly convinced that kid to quit, but sometimes all it takes is a few words to change everything, because legends aren't born, they're made by those who refuse to stop.